Welcome everyone to a new tutorial. Oh boy, this has been a long time coming. I've had so many people asking for this since I posted a picture of a rooster that I painted for my neighbor, Willie, who raises chickens, and she gives the eggs to the food bank. And I made this rooster for her. Everybody went crazy over it, and it's just taken me this long to get to the tutorial. So this is a couple different ways you can do it. If you go online, you can just go in a search engine and look for rooster clip art and find one that you like, the outline that you like, or just a full picture, and you can print that out and then size it to fit your canvas. We're going to be working on a 6x6 canvas today. Or you could get a stencil, and this is a stencil I found on Amazon. It's a folk art stencil, and it has the stencils for the chickens, and then it also has a stencil for the chicken wire background. So to do this, I painted my first 6x6 canvas floor black, and then I painted the other one kind of this turquoise color, and I'm going to apply the chicken wire stencil to the turquoise one, just laying the stencil over the top and then spraying it with this outdoor metallic silver paint, and voila, I've got chicken wire on my canvas board. It's so cool. So I let that dry, and I'm going to show you how to use the stencil. It's pretty basic here. You're just going to lay that over the top of the board and use a regular standard pencil to trace the outline of the stencil onto the board. It's kind of hard to see. I'm going to tilt it here so you can see there's the outline of the rooster on there. I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm going to use Saral Transfer paper, their white transfer paper. I got this also on Amazon. You can find it at art stores as well. And I printed out a picture of the rooster that I previously painted for my neighbor in place of a clip art thing, and I'm putting that over the transfer paper with the chalky side down on top of the canvas. And then I'm just going to use a regular pencil, and I'm going to basically draw this rooster on there, just filling in all the little feathers and the outline and everything, and then lifting it up, and poof, there it is. It's very easy to do. You could do this with any type of clip art. You can do it even with photographs. It's really easy. So now on the turquoise one with the chicken wire background, we need to fill that in black so your dotted colors will really stand out and be vibrant. So I'm just going to paint that in with this Martha Stewart Beetle Black acrylic. And then it got to be a little bit too skinny on the feet there, so I just got my black Sharpie out to finish coloring in the feet to make sure I didn't get it too blurry, because I want a sharp outline. And then once that dried, I put the stencil back over the top and used a General's charcoal white pencil to draw in the feathers. This is a white pencil that is like chalk, and you can remove it with a wet Q-tip. So let's get our supplies. I've got round toothpicks, a small dotting stylus that people use for a manicure. These are my pointy Q-tips that I got from the makeup department, a piece of wet paper towel all folded up, a paint palette, and I'm using a combination of heavy-bodied acrylics and golden fluid acrylics to mix up my first set of paints. And I also have a heavy body white paint, and then a more liquid white paint that I'm going to use. And this is Liquitex pouring medium that I'll be adding to the heavy bodied acrylics to thin them out and make them the right consistency for dotting. So I mix these together. I really like adding the little tiny drops of golden fluid acrylics to my heavy-bodied or craft acrylics just to boost the pigment saturation. I found that it really makes them vibrant after they dry. They don't darken and they don't crack. And I like using the heavy-bodied acrylics as the base because it gives more body to the dots, and they stand up like little buttons or little pieces of candy, and they don't flatten out or crack. And so I'm just kind of going back and forth here. I've put in just a tiny bit of the heavy-bodied acrylic because a little bit goes a long way. It's kind of a 1-to-1 ratio with the heavy bodied acrylic and the Liquitex pouring medium. And then I add some of the golden fluid, which also gives some elasticity to the paint. And I'm going to start mixing these up. I don't even wipe off my brush. I just go from well to well. So I'm getting them all kind of in the same color tone. And I'm just going to add some of the golden colors, some more of the whites, because as these dry they will darken another shade. So I usually add a little bit more white. And then I test it to make sure that it comes off my brush easily without dripping, but still leaves a distinct shiny dot. So the paint is ready, and I always start with the hardest things first because I like to leave the fun stuff to the end. So I'm starting with the rooster's face. This took me a lot of practice, but I'm just going to tell you how I did it here. I got my, my toothpick out, and I'm just sort of dragging my brightest red along the lines that I drew for the rooster's comb, and I'm pulling up that paint and dragging it around, making the outline of the comb. I'm going to do the same on the little wattle there under his chin, under his beak, in the bright red. And this paint is the right consistency so you can drag it a long way. And then I'm going to go back with a little bit of orange, and I'm going to highlight that just on the top edges, blend it a little bit, but I'm also leaving it a little bit raggedy because it looks really cool when it dries. Been watching acrylic painting technique videos and figured this out. It's pretty fun. Never really painted with a toothpick before. And I'm adding some of this dark maroon just to give a little bit more dimension to the comb, and just kind of blending it in. It's really not that hard. You just kind of, you don't even mix it that much. So that's really basically done. I'm just going to use some of this golden yellow for the eye. And I'm going to use that same golden yellow for the top half of the beak. I'm going to drag that down to a point. And then I'm going to use a darker brown for the bottom half of the beak. I'm also going underneath the eye with kind of this little cheek pad that my rooster has. He's got one under his eye, right on his cheek, and then he has one on the front of his eye, kind of an eye guard, and then on the back of his eye too. So I'm putting those in a little bit darker brown, kind of a little triangle shape, just to give a little bit of definition to the eye area. And then I'm just doing a little bit of touch up on the comb, adding a little bit more red there. There, he looks sufficiently proud. It's kind of what I'm going for, because he's a rooster. So I'm gonna do the feet next. I used sort of a golden brown on the front two toes, and then I used a darker brown on the back toe, so you got a little bit of a 3D look there. And then I'm going to use my lightest tan color to drag a dot down to make the back spur, and then also the 3 claws on the toes. And then do the same thing on the other leg, doing kind of this golden brown on the front toes, and then I'm going to do a darker brown on the back toe, and then go back and use the light tan for the spur and the claws. And then I went back with a little bit more of the brown and just sort of texturized the legs, because the legs on my rooster are like dinosaur legs. They're really textured, so I just kind of added a little bit more, and that's going to dry. And then we're going to get started on the feathers. So on the first feather, the longest feather coming down the side of his neck, I decided to do this herringbone ribbon design that I use when I'm practicing my Zen tangle patterns. And this looks really cool. I just do it on the main feather here just to make it a little bit more interesting than just being rows of dots. So you're just dragging a dot to the center line and then going back on the other side And you just swoop that all the way up. And I'm switching to a little bit darker yellow as I'm moving up the line. And you could practice this on a piece of paper first if you've never done a herringbone design. Just grab a piece of dark paper and draw a line on it and then try and follow it using this technique. Switch over to my orange now, getting a little smaller. It's the fun with these toothpicks, you can get so tiny. And then I'm going to fill in the very bottom of the feather with some white. So there's our first row, and I'm just going to do a brown row next to that. Just kind of testing my paints here to make sure that my dots don't pool out. I wasn't sure about this brown, so I decided to try that next, and looks like it's staying in place where I want it to. And then I added this very dark brown. I added some red to it to give it kind of a maroon look, and I'm just filling in the sides of the chicken's face just to separate it from the black a little bit. And I'm just going to keep the camera rolling here and speed it up a little bit. I'm just going to continue to add more rows of feathers using the dots, and sometimes I will blend them into another color. Like here I'm doing, I started with a medium orange and then added the red at the top and then the light orange at the bottom. Sometimes I'll do the same color all the way down. Sometimes I will change color. Just try and get a variety of different shapes, and you can do some that are faded and some that are I have an iridescent gold that I use too, and I make a gold feather to stick in there once in a while. Just so you're not doing exactly the same color side by side. And that just helps give your feathers more definition. So I'm going to go up the back here just to create that curve. And then I'm going to do the lower back feathers in the same warm tones. And these, on my rooster, they're lighter on the bottom. They're almost white at the bottom, and then they start to go darker as they get up toward the top of his back. So I'm going to do that with these feathers here, going from white at the bottom all the way up to this dark red at the top. And these are going to have a slightly more golden brown tone to them rather than the orange. And we're going to finish that in a tan. So I'm just going to continue to do rows of feathers here in alternating colors. And that is it for the warm tones on this guy. And I'm going to switch over to the other rooster, but first I'm going to put a pupil on his eye, and this will wake him up. He won't look like a zombie chicken anymore. Just like that. Boop. Now he's awake. Okay, and I've gone over to my other rooster board on the turquoise, and I've done the same thing, but because this is the stencil, he's a little bit different shape. And I'm painting within the bounds of the black silhouetted background. And he's all finished. I wanted to do both of them because acrylic paints tend to form his skin when you leave him out, so I needed to finish those, wash out the palette, and create these cool tones in the blue, the green, and the gray. And I'm testing the paint again to make sure it's the right consistency, making sure that I can shake the brush and the paint doesn't come off until I touch it very lightly to the surface. I'm going to shake it, it stays on, touch it lightly to the palette, and it comes off in a nice rounded dot. Then I know I've got the right consistency. So these are ready to go, and I'm going to do the herringbone pattern again, but this time in a reverse. And I've let the warm tones dry completely so I can rest my hand on them and not mess them up. So I'm doing the reverse herringbone in the blue. And this is my favorite part. I love doing the tail feathers. I think it is so much fun, and I love these cool tones. These wonderful blues. I get these really vibrant shades of teal and turquoise with a very special paint from Golden Fluid called Phthalo Blue in the green shade. And boy, a couple drops of that and you will get the brightest turquoise imaginable. It's wonderful stuff. I use it all the time. And it dries that color too. It's not going to fade at all. And so I'm just getting down to the tiniest dots here, and I've gone to my lighter shade of green. And then I'm going to move over and finish that tail in a lighter blue. But, uh-oh, I set down my finger in the paint, the green paint, and I smudged it. This is why I have the pointy Q-tips, for emergencies such as this. So I'm going to get in there and get that off before it dries. Okay, now we can get back to painting. Let's finish this off in a light blue. Go all the way down and boop boop, just add a couple little dots there, hanging out in space to end that feather. So now I'm going to use my dotting stylus tool to create some larger dots, because I go for some larger dots on the tail here just to give it, to make it separate from the other feathers. It really makes it look different with bigger dots and of course the cool tones. So I'm just going back and forth here, and you can use whatever combination you like. I just had a lot of fun with these. I always do a different pattern every time I do a chicken, and I've done so many of these. And it's fun just to experiment. I even did one with kind of a pink tail, and that was pretty fun too. So we're going to go up this larger feather. I'm going to fade this from a lime green to this emerald green. And I'm going to fill in with some of this vibrant turquoise, and then switching over to the lighter blue. And as you're filling in these feathers, just do different sizes of dots too, not just different colors, but different sizes, and that just makes it so much more interesting than if you're using the same sort of pattern over and over again. You can use little tiny dots, you can use dots that get bigger in the middle and then get smaller at the end. Do a row of same size dots, but just mix it up a little bit, and it just will make your painting so much more interesting. And again, just be sure that you don't have exactly the same shades right next to each other. About finished with this guy here, at least on his tail. So I'm going to do the tail on the other fella. This one's a little bit different shape than the stencil rooster was. I just love doing these long curvy feathers. I think they're so pretty. Okay, the tails are done, so now I'm going to do the wings, and I did the wings two different ways. On the one with the chicken wire background, I did 3 rows of gold dots, kind of this bronzy gold, and then I'm going to fill in between those rows with variegated shades of blue. Went from a teal to a turquoise and now a light blue. Just going to walk those up. And then I'm going to kind of fill in the body space with some gray. Just wanted to make this kind of a neutral shade because I really wanted the gold of the feathers on the neck to stand out. This is just kind of filling space. And then I added some blue on the breast of the chicken, and then down to the back legs as well, and then used sort of this slate blue, almost a purple, to fill in the space. And then also used some of that on his pants, his little leg feathers. And he is done. So I'm going to let that dry and go finish the other guy. And I did the same on him on adding the blue on the chest there. And then instead of doing the 3 rows on the wings, I decided to do this kind of whimsical S design that I thought was kind of fun. And then I'm going to fill in with the gray and the slate blue like I did on the other rooster. And then adding the leg feathers as well. So I allowed these to dry overnight. I just love these guys. I could make 100 of these, and I've made about 20, but I'm going to be making more. Anyway, so once they are dry, get a damp Q-tip, and you're going to start scrubbing off all of those chalk lines from the Saral Transfer paper. And then you're going to wipe the whole thing off really well with a piece of damp paper towel. Make sure you're getting off all of that chalk dust, which really makes the painting come alive. You get such definition. Looks so much better without the guidelines. And then do the same for the other one. And those lines from the General's charcoal white pencil should come right off. And they are finished. Oh, I can't believe I finally finished this tutorial. Oh, it's been a challenge. I had some technical difficulties, but we got it done. I sealed both of these with my Kamar Spray varnish, and they are complete. I hope you give this a try. It's a little bit of a challenge, but it is fun. These are my roosters. That's Rex. He's a wonderful fella, very friendly, and this is his very shy son, Tdid. I think he's gonna go away. There he goes. Thanks for watching, everybody.